What's up? Good morning. It is New Year's Eve, the last day of 2022. I cannot believe we are here for another year. We are so excited. Mark Zinno, Lauren Jabara. This is Let's Bet It, presented by Superbook Sports. Zinno, how the heck are we? It is December 31st. Let's go.
I am well, other than you can notice the new background. Peek into the personal life. My office got destroyed when the frozen pipes in my house burst over Christmas vacation. So we are going to have a little bit of a different setup here going forward, but we're sort of flying by the seat of our pants here. But nonetheless, we can say this much, Lauren. When you and I both are in this scenario here, because I think I've checked the records, that you and I will end 2022 with our plays of the day being well above 53.2%. So our plays of the day this year have made you guys money, so we're very happy about that. Let's hope we can keep it going.
Let's hope we can keep it going, and let's hope Michigan can keep it rolling tonight, or today, I guess. It's at 4 p.m. Eastern time against TCU. We have so much to get into today. One, sorry about your office. That sucks. I feel like everyone's house around Atlanta, pipes burst like everywhere. It's wild. At the mall, at houses. It was like, you guys need to prepare for the freeze more. I'm like, me being a Detroit gal from Michigan, like, we're used to these cold temps. Apparently, the infrastructure here cannot handle it.
Right, the infrastructure wasn't. So, I can't control the pipes.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. You want to know what I hope bursts this week or today is Michigan's offense against TCU's defense. We're going to get into the college football playoff games. We also have, obviously, the championship odds going. There's two other bowl games today. We'll touch on them, too. One of them being Alabama taking on Kansas State. That's going to be exciting. I don't know if Alabama's going to be up for that game, but we'll see, and we'll break it all down. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Let's bet it. College football playoff. The first game, the Fiesta Bowl. Zinno, I couldn't sleep last night because, to be honest with you, I am extremely nervous for this game. Michigan laying 7.5 points, and yes, they're laying over a touchdown, but TCU has seen every type of game this season. They've come from behind, double-digit deficits. They've played low-scoring games. They've played shootouts. They've played close games. They've played games where they've blown teams out. Like, they have seen it all this season. The one thing that gives me confidence is games are usually won in the trenches, and Michigan's front line is the biggest strength of their team right now with their running game. And I feel like with that, they might be able to take advantage. Also, if McCarthy's able to use his pass game just like he did against Purdue, and especially like he did against Ohio State, I feel like that's a recipe for success for Michigan. But 7.5 is a lot of points to be laying. Would you feel comfortable laying the tutty in a hook?
Well, again, I will give you a peek into my play of the day, which will be Michigan today, very simply. When I get a matchup like this, Lauren, one of the things I will do when I look at non-conference matchups between Power 5 teams, because there's such a difference in athletes across the board. Look, SEC athletes are a different breed than Pac-12 athletes, which are a different breed than, maybe ACC athletes. And so I dive into what you brought up is the trenches. If you look at the average weight of Michigan's offensive line, they weigh about 307 pounds, and their center is an absolutely a beast. He may be the best player on their offense. Yes. If you go to the TCU defensive line, they have one player who weighs over 300 pounds, and that is the nose tackle who will line up on the best center in America. But everybody else is at 270 or less. Their entire linebacking core is at 240, 245. So this is just a physical mismatch in which Michigan will dominate in the trenches going forward. That is something huge to watch. Now, you could argue that maybe, hey, look, without Blake Corum, Michigan doesn't look the same. Slow down. Donovan Edwards has done an amazing job since filling in.
Yeah.
Although, by the way, Michigan scored 43 and 45 points in the 2 games where there was no Blake Corum with Donovan Edwards. So I go back to what I saw last year in the national semifinal between Alabama and Cincinnati. Alabama just pushed that team around and dominated them. And it was the same sort of thing. You're talking about a major difference in size and an athlete here. Michigan has a huge physical advantage here. They'll play into that all day long. Look, TCU, give them all the credit in the world, right? Look, what they did this year and how they ran the table during the regular season. They get beat by a hair in their Big 12 title game. But, at some point in time, you have to recognize that they have not seen a single team like Michigan all year long, especially not defensively and especially not up front. I just don't think TCU has the horses in the barn here to compete with the Michigan Wolverines. If you're a little bit skittish, you want to buy the half point, I wouldn't necessarily, think it's a terrible idea, because I can say this much. If Michigan can't win by 7, they might not win the game at all. And that's really the way you have to look at it. If they're not going to win this thing by at least a touchdown, they're in for a much different game than they had ever expected, and TCU might win the thing outright. So it's either lay the points at Michigan or take the TCU money line. I'm going to lay the points at Michigan.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, and I wanted to hear it from you too, because I didn't know if I was just going to be laying the points with Michigan because it's my team and I want them to win. Bax Dugan does make me a little bit nervous. He has the ability to take advantage of Michigan's secondary. His offense ranks 6th nationally. He's really, really good at extending plays. But the one thing that makes me feel good is Michigan's only allowed 9 passing touchdowns all season, and the secondary ranks 3rd in the Big Ten in pass efficiency defense. So if that is one thing, because TCU has the better quarterback. I love J.J. McCarthy, but Max Dugan is better. I mean, he's just a better quarterback all around, right? So that's the way that they will take advantage of Michigan's defense. But at the same time, when you have the edge in the trenches, he's not going to have a lot of time to be thrown out of the pocket anyways. So I feel like this could be a really, really good spot where Michigan just puts a lot of pressure on TCU's offense. They're not allowed to get anything going.
I mean, let's look at the comp here, Lauren, right? Quentin Johnston, who is the dynamic wide receiver for TCU, likely could project himself as a first-round pick or a late first-round pick in the NFL draft coming up, should he choose to go down that road. Now, the best, comp to him, obviously, is Marvin Harrison Jr. He had 125 yards receiving in the Michigan-Ohio State game earlier this year. But, you have to look at what percentage of that was when Ohio State was already trailing by 2 touchdowns, and Ohio State was forced to throw more than they really wanted to. So they did a decent job at least containing Marvin Harrison Jr. and keeping him in check for the better part of that game. Let's see how this sort of unfolds. I'll say the same thing about the next semifinal game as well. Look, TCU has no choice but to play with a lead here. They've got to keep Michigan chasing. They've got to keep Michigan in a position where the game script says that Michigan has to throw and get away from the run, right? If they can do that, then they have a shot to win this thing outright. I just don't know if they have enough to be able to get the lead and then, hold on to that lead with any sense of, consistency throughout the entire game.
Yeah, if Michigan comes out, forces TCU to defend, runs the ball, and controls the pace and flow of the game, they're going to be in pretty good hands right here. I'm looking forward to that. It's at 4 p.m. Go Blue, baby. Go Blue. I just bought 4 new T-shirts. I'm going to the national championship game if they win. And so I'm really keeping my fingers crossed for this one. I know a lot, because I'm out there in California with the Hawks already. They played the Clippers the night before. I'm just going to stay an extra day. We don't have another game. I'm literally, the football gods are setting this up for me to be able to go to this game at SoFi. It couldn't have been worked out any better. So we'll see how this one plays out. The other one, Georgia, taking on Ohio State right here in Atlanta. And I know how crazy this was because the Hawks took on the Lakers last night for LeBron's birthday. And man, even just driving to park my car, there is so much going on around Mercedes-Benz here in Atlanta. It is buzzing. So UGA is basically playing a home game. They're defending their national title with an undefeated mark this time. They could go 15-0 on the season if they end up winning the next 2 games. This game is a matchup, though, of strength versus strength. Ohio State's offense against Georgia's defense. Ohio State's offense averages 44.5 points per game, 7.3 yards per play. Georgia's defense limiting teams to 12.8 points per game. I know Ohio State's going to be without TreVeyon Henderson due to injury. Is that going to be a huge loss for them, or do you think their front line is going to be able to hold up strong against a Georgia D-line who's probably the best in the country?
Well, I am going to this game today. Full disclosure, a good friend of mine who is a big Ohio State. He's a season ticket holder, so you probably won't get along with him, Lauren. But that said, we are going here. I am a neutral party to this whole thing. I'm going to sit back, have a couple of beers, eat cocktails, and enjoy a good football game. Ohio State is one of two teams in the nation that actually matches up with Georgia player for player, and they do it as well at the skill positions, and that is a huge plus for them. They certainly can hang for Georgia. There is no talent disparity like there is in the Michigan-TCU game between Georgia and Ohio State. Now, it's also interesting to note that this line has actually come down from 6.5 to 6, which means some money is coming in from Ohio State as of late last night. So we're seeing a little bit of a shift here. Now, how much is that of it is public money, and how much is that because Ohio State, I think, is a more publicly bet team than Georgia? That could be moving that line a little bit. I'm going to wait till we see if we get closer to kickoff tonight what the line does. But all that said, I think this is a situation here where, just like I said, Ohio State has the ability to get a lead and play with a lead and do it throughout the entire game. But that is a game script they absolutely need, because I look at this matchup and go and reflect back to what Georgia did to Tennessee earlier this year. Once Georgia got a lead, it is a Kirby Smart death march when it comes to being on offense. It's 12-play drives. It's 14-play drives. It's 8-play drives. Even if they only net in a field goal, Kirby Smart is willing to chew up 6, 7, 8, 9 minutes of clock while he just methodically goes down the field and puts Ohio State at a major disadvantage just based off of sheer number of possessions. Like, that's really what it boils down to. And as soon as Kirby gets a lead in big games like this, he goes to the same game script. I want to run the ball. I want to kill the clock. I'll put my defense back out on the field, and I don't really care about scoring touchdowns and being fancy. I'm just going to grind you down the next 3.5 quarters. So Ohio State, again, has to get a lead early, and they have to force Georgia to be in a situation where it's not necessarily their game. Now, Stetson Bennett can throw the ball. We've seen that. There's no problem with him being able to play from behind. We just don't know what Georgia looks like playing from behind, other than the Missouri game where they made a ton of mistakes. But I also think Ohio State has to look at making Georgia settle for field goals as huge wins. If they can keep them to 3 instead of to 7, then Ohio State is going to have a chance to win this game, because, again, they're not immune. Ohio State absolutely can bust a big play today on Georgia's defense. It's not like it can't happen. So Georgia has to play a near perfect game against a team like Ohio State to be able to do this thing. I think Georgia wins the game. I'm not 100% sure that they cover. I guess, if you're asking me to put a gun to my head, I would probably lay the 6 just based off of experience for Georgia and where they are and the head coach. I would give Kirby Smart a nod over Ryan Day, particularly after the last time I saw Ryan Day coach a game against Michigan when he got completely outclassed for about 3/4 of that game from a coaching standpoint. So, again, it's going to be a very, very tough matchup. Here's the way I would play this. I would bet Ohio State in the first quarter, or I'd bet them in the first half. If that comes to fruition and you're on the outside there, chances are that Georgia's not going to cover the 6. They may win the game, but they're not going to cover the 6. But I think if Georgia gets a lead and they win the first quarter and they win the first half, it could be a problem for Ohio State trying to finish out the last 30 minutes.
You talked about Ohio State needing to get stops, holding them to 3. Literally the sentence I have in my notes: can OSU defense get enough stops against Georgia's offense that's averaging 39.2 points per game? So this is going to be the key to this one. To be honest with you, with this game, I'm staying back and I'm just like, I'm watching it. I'm excited to see what happens.
Now, the question is, though, who do you want Michigan to face? Who would you want to rematch with Ohio State?
To beat the best, I want them to play Georgia. To beat the best, you have to be the best. To be the best, you have to beat the best.
Can you just say this much? If Michigan plays Ohio State in the national title game and Michigan wins it,
they win.
The smack talking in the rivalry is over. It is over. It is the ultimate nail in the coffin in the Michigan-Ohio State rivalry.
You know what, Zeno? I live here in Atlanta now, and I've gotten so much shit from everybody that's a Georgia fan. When I tell anybody that I went to the University of Michigan, they're like, but New Year's Eve last year. I live here. I want to to beat the best, to be the best, you have to beat the best. Georgia, in my opinion, is the best team in college football. Ohio State is not close. And so I want Michigan to be able to beat the best. And then they can say, then all of the talk from last year, null and void, especially from my guy Dominique Wilkins. He made me put on his sweatshirt last year on TV and say, how about them dogs after Georgia won. It was
I'm just telling you very simply. Michigan goes in as probably a 4 or 5 point favorite against Ohio State in the national title game. They're probably a touchdown underdog to Georgia.
Yeah. So I actually do have, fun enough, Jacob, thank you, my guy Jacob, he put in the look-ahead lines for the national championship game. TCU versus Georgia. Georgia's laying 16.5. Ohio State versus TCU. Ohio State's laying 10.5. Ohio State versus Michigan. Ohio State's laying 3. Michigan versus Georgia. Georgia is laying 8.5.
Wait a second. They would you're telling me the look ahead line would be Ohio State over a minus a field goal over Michigan?
Yes, right now. That's what it is.
Maybe
And
Michigan is a
TC
point.
could just maybe that's a motivation angle. Maybe that's a hey, Ohio State
Well,
has seen Michigan
the
before.
rematch always tends to favor the team that lost the first
Yeah.
time, typically.
Yeah, but Georgia's laying 8.5 points against Michigan in the national championship if they end up going.
Yeah,
The last time I remember
that's
that happening is Alabama laying over a touchdown against Notre Dame back in what was it 2012, and they
yeah,
roll tied it all
yeah.
over Notre Dame's ass. I was at that game. I was a Notre Dame fan, obviously, back in the day. That was brutal to watch. AJ McCarron just took advantage of everything that Notre Dame had, but that's neither here nor there. It's going to be interesting to see how these two games play out, and then all next week we're talking about the Natty Champ game, hopefully with a smile on my face after Michigan wins and a little nerves after Georgia hopefully wins this game. We'll see. I hope you have fun at that game tonight. Talking about the college football championship odds right now, Georgia's the favorite at minus 120. Michigan 3-1 odds. Ohio State plus 375. TCU 16.5-1. Would you make any of those bets right now before these college football
Ohio
playoff games
State.
start?
Ohio State is
Really?
the best value, and they're the one that they have the best shot. I mean, you can't deny that Ohio State has been one of the 2 or 3 best teams in the nation the entire year. I mean, there's regardless of what the rankings say, regardless of how they performed against Michigan, they're still one of the 2 or 3 best teams in the nation. So you're getting nearly 4-1 for Ohio State to win the national title. Now they absolutely can beat Georgia, and they certainly know that in a rematch against Michigan, they could beat them. They would pace the floor with TCU somehow if they get past Michigan, which isn't likely to happen. But all that said, yeah, I mean that's the play right there is Ohio State. When they get in a rematch, if it's against Michigan, it's again the rematch tends to favor the team that lost the first time. So Ohio State's the way to go.
Perfect. I love it. Actually, I don't love it, but at the same time, I'm betting Michigan 3-1. I'm not convincing other people to do it. I'm just doing it because obviously it's my alma mater. I want them to win. It's hard when your head and your heart get kind of mixed up together. It's hard for me to stay level-headed right now because all I want is Michigan to win the national championship game. But you're right. The best value is with Ohio State going up against Georgia. That's the bet to make right now if you really think that they can win that game. There's 2 other bowl games today. Not necessarily the college football playoff games, but the Music City Bowl. Still making some tunes down there. Iowa taking on Kentucky. Iowa's laying 2.5 points in this game. Will Levis, though, sitting out along with a lot of other Wildcat players right now. Let's talk about Iowa. I feel like Chris Rodriguez is out. I'm always so bad at saying his name. Kaviasi Smoke is out for the Wildcats as well. With Iowa, they're missing some big offensive pieces, but their offense really hasn't been great all season. So I don't even know if that's going to be that big of a hit for them. Their top 2 quarterbacks are out due to injury, the transfer portal. I feel like this is going to be a defensive game, but still both defenses aren't really out of this world either. I feel like it's not going to be like a record-scoring low game, but I look at the total right now, it's set at 31.5, and that is extremely low, especially for a college football game. I still kind of lean the under for this game. How do you see this one playing out?
Well, just for a frame of reference, this total was actually lower than the total of the Army-Navy game, so that ought to tell you what odds makers think about the ability of these 2 offenses to score points. And what we've seen throughout bowl season so far, and look, none of these things are necessarily connected. Because they're all different programs, different coaches, different players, and everything. But what we've seen, a lot of the teams that have massive opt-outs and key opt-outs on the offensive side of the ball, like quarterback and other positions, their offenses have struggled. Look at what we saw last time. Even, Tennessee didn't score a ton of points until late in the game when it was out of hand. When they don't have Hendon Hooker and it's Joe Milton. We see across the board. Florida got waxed without Anthony Richardson. I mean, so when you see a major quarterback defection like Kentucky losing Will Levis, the bottom line here is that, look, this team isn't going to score points. Both these defenses are good. They've been better, but both of these defenses are very good. I would stay on the under here. I mean, I don't really have a play on the side. I mean, why even bother if you have a feeling like Iowa's going to win this thing? I mean, it's less than a field goal. In reality, you're looking at a coin flip game regardless. So take the under, sit back, and don't even watch the game. Just check the score every 15 or 20 minutes and just make sure it's trending because it's not going to be a game you want to watch. It's going to be pathetically ugly.
Yeah. It's going to be a really, really ugly game. If you do like a side, though, I will say Kentucky has been really good in bowl games under Stoops. They've made it to 7 bowl games under him. Lost the first 2, but have won all of them since then. So that's something interesting. But obviously, he probably had a quarterback in those games. So, again, who knows what's going to happen here. But Will Levis obviously sitting out. Doesn't want to affect his draft stock. We're going to see what happens there. That's going to be a boring game. I'm betting the under in that one. The other one I'm looking forward to is the Sugar Bowl because this is hard to know what to expect from Alabama in this game. It was a disappointing season for Bama. They struggled against Tennessee and LSU. They almost dropped games to Texas and Texas A&M. And then you look at the other side, Kansas State. They started the year unranked. They beat TCU in overtime of the Big 12 championship game. And they're feeling good about their game right now. I feel like this is a game where Bama headed into the season, they wanted to be in the college football playoff. This is not where they want to be with 2 losses playing against a Kansas State team being almost a touchdown favorite against them in the Sugar Bowl. They might not be up for it. This is the worst Nick Saban team since 2008. For Kansas State, Will Howard stepped up. For Adrian Martinez, when he went out, he had a great season. Both of them provide unreal strengths. I feel like we're going to see more of Howard in this game. He provides a little bit more of a dynamic passing option, but they might throw Adrian Martinez in there too, just to give Bama a different look. And I know that Bryce Young didn't make it to the Heisman this year, obviously, because of the impact of how his team has done this season. But he still won the Heisman last year. This guy's still an awesome playmaker that can make things happen on the field alongside Deuce Vaughn for Kansas State. Who do you think comes out on top of this one? Is this a motivation factor game or is this a talent game that you look at?
No, I mean, look, I think it's all about motivation. Kansas State has every reason to go out and beat Alabama. Alabama has absolutely no reason and want to go out and beat Kansas State. That said, Alabama had 19 players enter the transfer portal since the end of their regular season. So it tells you that there's a lot of guys who are not playing in this game for Alabama right now, including their quarterback, Bryce Young, Will Anderson, and a whole bunch of other key players. So, it boils down to here that Kansas State is the motivation side, and they're still probably the right side. Look, this line stays where it is, and it's come down, obviously. This was over a touchdown, and it was bet down very quickly, not just by the public, but Sharps got on the State side because, the motivation factor of this whole thing. I don't ever want to doubt an Alabama team, but again, this will boil down to how crisp is Alabama. They've had a couple of weeks to get ready for this game. I mean, Nick Saban never really looks unprepared for a football game.
Yeah.
He might be in games that are closer than others, but it's not going to be a case where Alabama is going to get waxed. I would play with K-State in this one. I would take the points here. I think it's absolutely going to be an open game. I would tell you that points are going to be scored. I think that this is not exactly going to be a tough defensive battle. K-State's defense is okay. It's not great. TCU was able to score 30 on them. So it's one of those things where it's like, when you look at how the game script unfolds, Alabama should be able to score. I think you'll see plenty of Jahmyr Gibbs in this game as well. And I think 100% that Kansas State will do everything they can to score against an Alabama defense that's been suspect at times. So I would look more towards the total and go over here, but also that, K-State, they're probably the side with the over. Look, if K-State can't score, they're not going to come close to covering this game. That's really what it boils down to. If this thing stays under 55, because Alabama's winning this game, 37-13, and K-State's not. So, and I don't know that Alabama's defense is up to the challenge at this point in time.
Yeah, I like that. I'm taking the points again with K-State too, just motivation factor for me and the amount of opt-outs, transfers at Alabama. I mean, this is not going to look like the Alabama team we've watched all season, and it hasn't been the Alabama team that we've been watching for the last decade under Nick Saban, right? So I feel like we're going to get a lot different of a look. Yes, he can coach them and be ready, Nick Saban can, but again, K-State, I'm respecting them enough. They had a really great season. They've basically defied all odds and all doubters. And now they're playing in the Sugar Bowl against a team like Alabama, and they're less than a touchdown underdog. I'm taking the 6.5 with them. I feel like it's a motivation thing. And I think they'll be up for this game. I feel like Bama wins. I think K-State covers narrowly, and that's how this game's going to play out. All right, we're going to get into our best bets of the day, but first, let's bet it, presented by our friends at Superbook Sports. Pile up the wins, pile up the money with our friends at Superbook. Right now, the best betting app from Las Vegas is giving you free money every week you make a bet. Just place a $50 bet each week with Superbook, and they'll give you a $5 bonus up to $50 for betting each week afterwards. If you're in Arizona, Colorado, Iowa, Nevada, New Jersey, or Tennessee, download the Superbook Sports app or visit superbook.com to get your streak started today. From superbook.com to Pickswise.com, Zeno. 3-star plays of the day. We got any on the site today?
Oh, well, yes, including one of mine. I actually did write-ups for both of the games today were write-ups by me. So, I mean, look, this is absolutely a day that you need to check out the Pickswise website between now and January 2nd when all the games are up there. There's plenty of great information out there, but I will save my 3-star play of the day when we do our picks of the day. But obviously, I think everybody knows where I'm going here with Michigan. But I defer to you first to lead us off here.
You can defer to me first. I will say January 2nd, you're right. A lot of really great bowl games. Mississippi State playing Illinois. We have Tulane, USC, LSU, Purdue, Penn State against Utah. So those are going to be some good ones to look forward to on January 2nd. But yes, our play of the day is going to be laying the 7.5 points with our boys at Michigan. Go blue, baby. Games are won in the trenches, and that is where Michigan has the advantage in this game. Their O-line is one of the best in the country, if not the best. Actually, they are the best O-line in the entire country. Like you were saying, all of those guys over 300 pounds, where only one guy on TCU's D-line is over 300 pounds. They're going to be overmanned, overpowered in a game like this. I look at, everyone's like, oh, without Blake Corum, they're not going to be great. They're going to, drop the run game, which has been their strength all season. Donovan Edwards has really, really impressed me. He was able to take advantage of Ohio State, 216 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns. Then the week after that, in the Big Ten championship game against Purdue, he had another 185 yards. I feel like he's going to be able to use the run game. The O-line's going to be able to create gaps for him. The one thing that makes me nervous is the fact that TCU has the better quarterback in Max Duggan. He's able to take advantage of Michigan's secondary, but at the same time, if he doesn't have a lot of time to be passing the ball, he's not going to be able to make those passes. The biggest thing is Michigan's secondary needs to shut down Quentin Johnston and the rest of their deep receiving core. If they do that, they're going to win this game. They're going to do it handily. The one thing that makes me feel good about that, Michigan's only allowed 9 passing touchdowns all season, and their secondary is ranked 3rd in Big Ten pass efficiency defense. I love it. In addition, their pass rush had 70 tackles for loss, 36 sacks on the season. Let's get Max Duggan on the ground. Let's pound them. Let's run the ball down their throats, and let's get this win, guys. I feel good about it. Michigan laying the 7.5. Please continue.
Well, I mean, it's only fitting that on the final day of 2022, you and I, as I said at the top of the show, have made our Pickswise viewers and listeners money all year long, but we are on the same side here today with Michigan minus 7.5. Everything you said, I think, is 100% true. But let's add a couple more things here about what Michigan can really excel at. You just talked about getting Max Duggan on the ground. What does Michigan do really well? Get to the quarterback. 36 sacks on the year. They average nearly 3 sacks per game. Also, what they do a very good job of is keeping their quarterback upright and clean. J.J. McCarthy's only been dropped 13 times this year. Do the math, guys. That's once a game. If TCU can't create any pressure on J.J. McCarthy, he's going to have a field day being able to throw to the receivers when he has to do it. This is just a physical mismatch that favors the Michigan Wolverines here. Talked about the size up front. Donovan Edwards is going to have plenty of room to run, and he's going to have plenty of room to be able to work through that TCU defense. It's been a great story for TCU. They've been fun to watch all year long. They've made us a lot of money for those who are on the TCU train. That's certainly great, but I think it all comes to an end here in the national semifinal. Give me Michigan laying the 7.5 points here against TCU tonight.
Let's go, guys. Go blue. And it's only like 5 hours away, 5.5 hours away until kickoff. I'm so excited for it. Happy New Year, everyone. Hope your 2022 ends great, and I hope you start your 2023 off nice and strong. I'm not on the show tomorrow. I will be flying with the Atlanta Hawks to the West Coast at 10 a.m., but Zeno and Jared have you covered to go over all of the football games from today. I'll see you guys back on January 2nd. Until then, peace out. Happy New Year. Let's get it. Let's get it.